I think yoga, especially in the community I teach in, is so heavy on yoga safety for physical safety, but so light on yoga safety for emotional safety. And why are we not pausing and inquiring about the way we teach before we teach?
Today is episode 135, and I have my friend and co-teacher, Ashley Platz, on the show. Ashley and I met a few years back in LA when we took Noah Mazè's $500 teacher training. That's also how we got in contact with Rocky, and that's how the whole little brigade started, really. Ashley's a phenomenal yoga teacher in Los Angeles, and she has been such a beacon of light and hope and voice. With everything going around in BLM, she's been very involved. I recently had an incident this past weekend where I was really what was brought to the surface was, some of my own insecurities behind talks around racism, and I got to live my nightmare in real time, and Ashley and I shared about it. She was actually the one that I called to kind of talk and process the entire situation afterwards. So we get into that a little bit about the show. I've been huge in the spirit of vulnerability and sharing as things come up and just keeping it real and honest. And so I felt the show was really important to produce a lot sooner than it was later. Of course, the show would not happen if it wasn't for your love and your support. So please head over to iTunes and write us a little review. You can leave us a few stars. Don't forget to tell your friends that the show is out there in podcast land, so share it with them. And you can always support the show as well by heading to dannypomploon.com/support. Leave us a donation. It helps keep the show on the air. It helps cover the production cost and all the fun things that go with it. Without further ado, here goes episode 135 with Ashley Platz. Oh my gosh, is this the Ashley Platz? The famous Ashley Platz?
I prefer the Ashley Platz.
Oh, got it. Wait, I'm confused. Was that acting?
I think that was acting.
Are you acting right now, or is this real?
I'm going to turn it off, so now it's real.
Okay, great, cool. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Danny.
How are you?
I'm good, talking to you from a tight little closet in my house so that, I can hear you. It's very exciting in quarantine.
I love that you're back in the closet.
I'm back in the closet. It took a pandemic, but I'm back.
Get out of the closet, girl. Get out of the closet.
Get me out.
That's so funny.
I know. I sat down in the closet and I literally was like, well, this is full circle.
Yeah. Trigger. That's funny. I'm glad I finally got you on the show, Ash, because I know I've been talking about getting you on the show for a little bit, and I haven't been able to, and it's felt like it's been different timing on both our sides.
Yeah.
And it almost wasn't really sure, like, well, what was I going to bring you on the show for and whatnot, and then
yes.
Everything kind of just fell into the right place at the right time. And so I'm really excited to have you on the show to share and talk about what we're going to get into today.
Absolutely. I'm so excited.
So I want to kick off by saying that, one, you have been very passionate about Black Lives Matter. You have been very outspoken about Black Lives Matter. And you are one of the people that, from an outsider's perspective, as a yoga teacher, I see you putting in the work. And what I mean by that is, like, I see you showing up, and, I see you in allyship, and I see you speaking up, and I see you provoking in the best way possible to getting, people to think critically. And it's been very cool to just see that, because I never knew that side of you. I took training with you and we hung out and we became friends there, but that's not really, it wasn't a side of Ashley that I had known. And so as everything, has come forth and, people have shown up and some people haven't shown up, you've really, in my eyes, have been an inspiration for me to watch my growth and to also put in my work. So, one, thanks for that. And two,
thank you for doing it.
Yeah, it's hard, but
Oh yes.
Two, it's just it's really cool to see you to have a voice and really step into it. And I guess I want to hear where you're at with it. today, because today is different than yesterday and tomorrow. Like where are you at with it today?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great question, because I would say that, first of all, I am not an expert. I am, for those who cannot see me, a white female who is a yoga teacher. Oh my God, what? Shocking. Who saw that coming?
You
A
idiot.
white liberal yoga teacher. What? Right? I am not an expert. I don't pretend to be an expert in yoga or in social justice issues.
Just in acting, right? You're just an expert actor.
I'm an expert in acting. That is
right.
True.
Got it.
But much like yoga is a practice, one that requires us to commit and to continue to learn, anti-racism is also a practice. So I am someone who has a passion for learning, and that happens to fuel these two parts of my life that very much coincide. Yoga is a practice of being okay with being uncomfortable. And if anti-racism isn't also that, holy shit, it is really. And it is something that, much like yoga, I am going to fail at over and over and over. I am going to say the wrong thing. I might say the wrong thing in this podcast, but the work for me is to acknowledge, okay, that was not the right alignment. How do I shift? What needs to engage? And where am I looking? What needs my attention so I can pull this thought into the correct alignment? And you know what? Day to day, sometimes that changes. But it's always with the same intention that we're like hoping to strive for equity, in our bodies with our balance and our yoga practice, and in our culture and our communities with anti-racism.
Yeah. It's not easy work. And I'm starting to find out more and more and more that it's not only not easy work, it's really hard and super triggering.
Very triggering. It's very ego challenging. It is not Instagrammable. It's not cute. And it does not, in my experience, speaking personally, it brings out the worst in me in the best ways. It makes me look at the things I've done in my past, the things I'm doing in my present, and demands that I hold myself accountable because I know better.
I love that.
It's sort of the curse of being aware.
Right.
You know better. So how can you hold yourself to that standard?
Right. Yeah, totally. It's not an easy thing to do, period.
No. And I think a lot of it comes from, there was a 1980 study done on listening, and 60% of our communication is through listening, but we only retain 25% of what we hear. And that was in the 80s. So I would imagine it's way worse now.
Because our attention spans are 0.
Yes, right. So, maybe if you're listening to this podcast, you think you're fully listening and committed, but you're also doing dishes, you're also walking the dog, you're also doing whatever that is. And it's like, how I find that as a yoga teacher, I have absolutely different ways that I listen to the people that I love and who I say I love you to versus my students versus my own body, right? We are constantly talked to about listening in yoga, listening to your breath, listening to your body, listening to our teachers. But why does it stop there? And why are we not also taught to listen to our communities and our community members who are suffering? Why are we not encouraged through this practice of yoga to listen there and to hold space for that?
So I had called you this weekend because I had lived my...
Before you start this story, I just want to say that this is such a beautiful and perfect example of everything that I hope to see in our yoga teacher community going forward.
Thank you.
And it was hard, and it's going to be, I can't, like, there's a messy story, and I'm going to let you tell
it. Yeah, it was my biggest nightmare in action. It totally was like the thing that I was just like, no, this can never happen. It's happening to me right now.
Yeah. So set the stage. Where were you?
So, as Black Lives Matter has been going on and, everything's been happening, I've been trying to really figure out what am I going to do to do my part in this?
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do to, um, how am I going to support?
Change.
Yeah. And not only just like, not do like white savior complex and be like, I got to go do everything, but like, what am I truly going to do to make myself a better person?
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't feel comfortable going out to the rallies as much, mainly because of, immune system stuff. And then, and then I also didn't, have a ton of cash to donate to places. And, this is all external stuff, right? Not internal things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, well, what I can do is I can volunteer my time and, my expertise and support those that are going through, teacher trainings and things like that. And so I offered my time to a nonprofit that teaches teacher trainings to the BIPOC community or the BIPOC community. For those of you, some people are like, BIPOC, what's that?
Yes, Black Indigenous people of color. Yes.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke. And so, I am facilitating and helping really in this training. And, on day one of the training, this was last month, I came in and, I got into the Zoom room, and as I'm looking around, I noticed, oh, I'm the only guy in here. Oh, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. I'm not only a guy in here, I'm a white presenting guy in here. Mm-hmm. So like, and there are 37 other, people of color. There are maybe one or two other white women in there. And immediately I could feel my own insecurity. I could feel my own, fragility start to come into play. And, they're introducing some of the other people in the training, and they're getting down to me. And I'm like, okay, well, they gotta know that I'm gay, and they gotta know that I'm Mexican. And like, if they know that, I can come to the table and I'm all good. And like, it gives me a free pass, and like, we're good. I should be here, And as that conversation was going on, what I realized was, I was like, oh, Danny, you're making it about you, and this has nothing to do with you. You're just here to support. And so what you should do is just listen and speak when spoken to. End of story,
Yes.
And I actually got to the point where they introduced me, and I was like, hi, I'm Danny. This is what I do. I'm really excited to be here. That was it. I just left it at that.
Great.
And I supported, the entire weekend, and I was convinced in my own mind that I bombed, and it was one of the weekends where I had, I bought all the books. I watched all the documentaries. I gave myself a panic attack, and, was like, oh my God, I've been a terrible, ally to everybody, including my own queer community, just, trying to fix everything overnight as, a deeply feeling person would. And so, I've been putting in my work in that regard and reading and, all that stuff that goes back there. Right. And, yes. This last session where we got to hang out together, I had facilitated a class, and, I was going on a break to go teach another class. And as I came back later on from my own personal break, they were already back in discussion. And as I came into the discussion, I heard the word triggering. I heard the context he. And I heard, a couple things regarding, Black women and their bodies and, sexualizing things. And I was like, whoever he is, please do not let it be me.
Yeah. Whoever these group of women are talking about that feel triggered by this man, please don't let it be me. Yes.
Do not let it be me. It could be anybody else except me.
Yes.
So I'm listening and I'm listening and I'm listening. And sure enough, it's me. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to get the context of like, so what's going on and yada, yada, yada. And, finally the lead was like, well, Danny's, obviously we all know Danny's here now, and let's tie him in and give him an opportunity to speak. And, they had said, she said, Danny, some of the women were triggered in here by one of the cues that you had said. And she said, I don't know exactly what it was, but it was in chair pose, and it was talking about stop dropping it like it's hot. And it's Saturday morning. So pull it in. And that was offensive, that was sexualized, that was racist, and that was, a few other experiences that were had in the room. Mm-hmm. And I sat there and I heard that. And as I heard that, immediately my defenses wanted to come up. I was like, well, I didn't mean that to anybody. I say that all the time. It's
hilarious.
I think it's funny.
My students like it.
Totally. Right? Every single thing in the book. And, again, it's processing in real time. I sat there and it was almost like there was this discussion in my head that was like, well, what are we going to do here, Danny? How do you want to come into this?
Mm-hmm.
And I just I didn't even think, I just started to speak. And I said, in the spirit of transparency, I'd like to share with everybody a couple of things. And I shared my experience on that first day. I said, I came in the first day and was like, I need to qualify who I am. They need to know that I'm gay. They need to know that I'm Mexican so that it's safe for me to be here too. And, blah, 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 blah. And I shared, I was like, but that was making it about me. And my job is to sit here and to listen. And then I continued on to say, 39 people in that class had an experience. Some of you thought it was funny. Some of you thought it was offensive. Some of you didn't even hear it. Some of you are over this conversation right now. Some of you are hurting right now. And I don't want to take away from anyone's experience. If it was hurtful to you, it was hurtful to you, and that's what's more important. If you felt something from it, if you felt triggered from it, that is a valid experience. You're in a space where you should feel safe, where you should feel supported, and, so on and so forth. And I said, I want to acknowledge that I'm the only white presenting man in the room, and that I'm lucky, and that I get to walk around in this shell very lucky. And that people that, don't have, the same parts and don't walk around the same skin color, like, it's a lot harder. And I shared again, I was just like, I read all the books, and I gave myself a panic attack over one weekend. And literally, it was like, well, I grew up with my sister and my mom, and turns out I suck to women. I grew up around, a big BIPOC community, and I'm not really that great of an ally. And, I'm a gay man walking around the world, and I'm actually not that great of a gay man ally to the queer community. And it was really hard. And it wasn't until recently where I had another conversation with a friend who said, Danny, here's the thing about racism. You're going to fuck it up. You're going to fuck it up a lot. You're going to fuck it up multiple times. And the only way that you're going to learn is when you fuck it up. And you have to give yourself the permission and the space to do it and to try really hard and to educate yourself and to do it again until you get it.
So you can fail better.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And then I just continued. I had said, if what I had said hurt somebody, that's not okay. And unless, we have these conversations, I won't know that. And I could continue hurting people, and that's not something I want to do. I don't want to walk around the world if this is hurting someone. And I said, I also yogified it too. I was like, and also yoga teaches us and reminds us that we have the agency of choice and inquiry. So if we're starting to jump on our emotions, if we're starting to let the chitta take over, we're kind of letting everything else win except for the yoga. So we pause, we inquire, we settle, we come in, and then we do whatever happens after that. And, I think I continued saying something along the lines of, like, I have to facilitate now for an hour and a half on anatomy, and I want to run and I want to hide. I want to cry in my room and I don't want to be here. And that's not what's going to happen. I'm actually really passionate about what I'm doing. I'm passionate about being here. I'm going to teach you the best of my ability that I can. And that's what's going to happen next, because it's still not about me.
And what was the class that you were going to teach right after that?
Progressions and regressions. Yeah.
And so I just want to reiterate for your audience why I love this so much, because those of you who are really technical yogis who understand what progression to regression is, what Danny experienced was a regression in someone took him and was like, let's pull back your teaching and look at what you're doing and where maybe we can make this a little easier, and take you out of your comfort zone and peel it back so that we can push forward better, so that we can move further, safer.
Yeah.
Because this idea you brought up, this thing about, safety and the safe place. And I think yoga, especially in the community I teach in, is so heavy on yoga safety for physical safety. but so light on yoga safety for emotional safety.
Right.
And why are we not pausing and inquiring about the way we teach before we teach, And this is
Right.
something I've been thinking about a lot, and why I appreciate your story so much, because in my work to become not only a better ally to BIPOC, but also to our queer community, I've tried to rework my brain around taking out cues that gender certain anatomy, because I have students who are non-binary and I have students who are trans, and I don't want them to feel like if I say something like old school thought, like, well, tall men all have tight hamstrings. It's like, no, they don't.
Right.
And what if one of those tall men was a trans man or is a like, do you know what I mean? Like, all these things are just like insensitivities, and like my saying that doesn't help anyone. Lots of people have tight hamstrings no matter their height. So it's like, how can we be better allies through just the vocabulary we teach with?
Right.
And this is hard work, especially, to call back to your lesson, is like, it was funny to you. It was working for your group.
Right.
But what does your group look like versus what does that group look like?
Well, and also I don't need to sit there and be like, like I even, I think I said that in the conversation where I was like, in the Castro, it's really funny, in my community, it's really funny.
Yeah.
And, that's also just putting a barrier around it, being like, well, it's okay because
in my bubble. Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by the app called Fastic. You can start your journey free today with their app. You can follow popular fasting methods like the 16 to 8 and become a fasting pro in no time. It's super easy with this app, Fastic. My favorite part of the app is that it's easy to manage and it's just super fun to use. There's a ton of nutrition plans with over 400 delicious meals and recipes. And again, like I said, it's all for free. So check it out on the App Store. That's Fastic, Fastic. This episode is brought to you by Real Paper, a tree-free toilet paper made 100% from bamboo. I absolutely love this product. It's eco-friendly, plastic-free, and helps reduce waste, period. I just want to reiterate that this paper has 0 plastic, and more importantly, it's not packaged in any plastic. None. The cool thing is it's delivered to your doorstep on your personalized schedule, so whenever you need it, so you'll never run out. You can choose how often you want them to deliver, and every roll purchased helps fund access to clean toilets for those in need. All about it. Use my coupon code DANNY to receive 25% off your first order at realpaper.com. Now back to the show.
And also, like, is it funny in your bubble because everyone accepts that that's okay, and maybe there is someone who's in your class who's uncomfortable by that but doesn't want to feel ostracized, so laughs anyway? You know what I mean? There's all these things that I think about, not just about your comments, but about like how I comment on my classes as well. Right. How can I change the vocabulary around the cues I'm giving so that yoga can truly be more accessible?
Right.
Because all bodies should be welcome in yoga. But when I look at my classes, they're majority skinny white females.
Right. Yeah.
At least they were for a long time. They've, in the last 2 years, has changed quite a lot as I've sort of changed the way I teach quite a lot. And then on Zoom, they can be, now it's whatever. It's God knows what's going to show up. Everything's going to show up. Someone who only wants to do handstands and someone who only wants to do child's pose is going to show up to my class. And that's okay, and that's what I'm teaching to is that space. But I think this is what sparked my volume since June, as far as how loudly I am trying to speak about this, is that we are teaching a sacred practice from India of brown culture. You are white presenting. I am so white. And yet, most of our spaces are filled with white people. And it's like, how can we honor that we are teaching something from brown culture, hopefully not terribly appropriated, but likely very appropriated, to people that are in our entire community, not just our little bubble. How can we make that more inclusive? And I saw a lot of yoga teachers that I work with speaking out and saying Black Lives Matter. And I saw a lot not saying anything. And as much as I would love to meditate away racism,
Right.
that is not going to happen, people.
Right. What's your opinion on, some people are doing the work and they're necessarily not doing it outwardly like on social media, but they're doing other areas of work like protesting and donating and volunteering and whatnot. Like we don't see that outwardly, right? So do you think there is a sense of over policing?
I do feel like there are ways to see the work being done in the teaching. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there are, whether you're posting it online a million times, like that's not everybody's forum, like I'm not a Facebook or a Twitter person. So like if someone looks at those forums with my name, they may not see how active I am until they go to my Instagram. That's just like where I feel I can get my voice across the loudest. But if you take my class, you understand that I'm teaching to a broader audience and I'm not just teaching to skinny white Lululemon. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's probably more over policing within liberal communities for sure, but what I feel mostly is that when the allyship turns to policing, we've lost the goal. Like if you're trying to turn someone's opinion on becoming an ally, and maybe they've talked to you about it, but they're not posting something. If you're trying to get them to post something to like prove it, but they already feel they are doing the work and maybe they are quietly reading a book, like let them do the work on their own. It's what's more interesting to me is like, okay, well, where are your friends who have not engaged with you about this?
Right.
And can you see what they're feeling about it? And I dare you to have a really uncomfortable conversation about, for your friend who said all lives matter, for your friend who's not saying anything, and just check in. And it can be from a place of love and it can be from a place of empathy. I get a lot of shit on my page sometimes for having people come like, I don't have white privilege. Ashley doesn't have white privilege. And like, they'll go down and I'll engage with them and I'll ask them questions. And people are like, why are you engaging with this person? You're not going to change their mind. And I'm like, maybe I'm not going to change their mind, but what if for a flicker of a moment, they think about it?
Right.
That's a win to me.
Right.
If I can, and I'm not going to change the way they live their life through Instagram at all. But if there's a flicker of like, wait a minute, that is a white privilege that I experience, like she said, even if it's just for that moment, I'll take it. It's worth it to me to like humble myself down to have that moment. And listen, it's not easy, especially when you get really aggressive people.
Yeah. People can get really aggressive.
Yes. But it's a choice and it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
And I don't feel comfortable teaching yoga in white silence. I don't think that I can speak from a place of integrity if I am not doing the work.
Right. I know that there are some people out there that are, they're still working through their own process, which is fine. And they may be a little scared or don't know where to start on speaking up or being more involved. And, based on what you've done and based on what you've, educated yourself on, Ashley, what are some ways that people can really, step into allyship and how can, white yogis, specifically do better in where we're at?
Oh, I love this question so much. Because this can be so small. This can be so small. One of the first things I did when I started to notice the lack of vocalness in the yoga community for BLM was I started just like, I went through all of the yogis that I follow on social media, and I noticed mainly white women. And I was just like, let me change this. Let me change this so that the people that I follow are more represented. Let me see some more color in here. Let me see some different sizes in here. Let me see queer, BIPOC, non-skinny teachers. And let me follow them and see what they're saying. And if that's your only step, you're going to hear different voices. You're going to get opinions that you'd not thought about. You're going to hear experiences that you've never understood. That's a super tiny thing you can do that takes 10 minutes of like a little investigation that will give you a little bit of a broader scope of what's going on. But on top of that, you know, are what well, who are your teachers? Do you take the same teacher every time? Could you take someone who doesn't look like you? Could you take someone for, the blessing of the Zoom classes now is you could take class anywhere, you know? Uh, you could take class with a teacher who just finished their teacher training, who maybe isn't a great teacher yet, but is trying. Why not? Or you could take a teacher that's like a master level who's like living in India doing all of the things that we would call yogic. But we get stuck in these patterns, right? These samskaras. This is the like behavioral training. You can't, when you've already carved the path down the road of like, I take this teacher's class every Thursday at this time and that's what I do. What are you learning?
Right.
So if you start to veer off that road, especially if it makes you uncomfortable, oh my God, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Do you see the landscape of yoga changing in regards to more equality in yoga?
Do I see it? I see that larger yoga companies and corporations are reaching for it, and it is mostly what I am seeing is not a disingenuine reach. So that is exciting. In my community personally, I teach in West Hollywood, so I have a large queer community there.
Hey.
Hey. And we look like every color of the rainbow and all different shapes and sizes. So that's exciting to me. But I will also say that I did not see that demographic show up for me until I started posting publicly that I am queer. So I do feel like where you see teachers that have voices that are different than yours, amplify.
Right.
Amplify, encourage, support, be there for them. I feel like there is a big push, especially right now, because we're kind of stuck at home, where all of us are feeling this like rage.
Yeah.
I was just talking to a student of mine who is this incredible, fantastic Indian yogi who used to play sitar for my classes. He's a musician, he's an actor, he's a father. And he was saying how, yoga right now could be such a huge support to this movement. It really, truly could. I mean, Virabhadrasana, warrior pose. The story of that pose is a story about channeling pure rage and anger into heroism. And Americans have a lot of rage right now. We have a
Totally.
lot of rage, and we could use these warrior poses, to sort of symbolize and move this energy around. And we were talking about it, and I said my concern is this idea of meditating on it, that it's not going to result in outward action or in inward awareness of microaggressions or obvious acts of racism in yoga studios and yoga culture. And I was like, how do we make this practical?
Right. How do we actually make it a thing?
How do we make it a thing?
Right.
And he said, it's the teacher. The teacher is the example. And this is where I feel a tremendous sense of responsibility. not only for the physical safety of the student, for the teaching, for all of this, but also as, we are put into these positions of leaders in our communities, whether we ask for them or not. If you're just like, I just want to teach yoga, boom, guess what? You're a leader in your community. Hate to break it to you. People are going to listen to you. Maybe you didn't sign up for that. That's what's going to happen. But the teachers being the examples, being vulnerable, sharing these stories like you just shared yours, and sharing the lesson, but explaining the difference that, yes, you can hear my example and you can hear that I'm trying to learn this lesson and you can hold me to it, but can you hold yourself to it also? Can the community hold each other accountable to be better?
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of work and there's so many different ways to do it. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way to start it. I think that, obviously don't burden anyone else with your education.
Yeah. Well, it's the same as like religion, right? Like, be religious for yourself because that's who benefits from you being religious. Be anti-racist for yourself because you benefit from being anti-racist. You do not benefit from having racist thoughts. And there is no, there's an incredible book called How to Be an Anti-Racist. Nice and easy. It's dense, but it's fucking great book. That Ibram Kendi talks about how there is no non-racist. You either hate or you're fighting against hate. There's no apathy. There's no in between. It is either you have a thought that is racist or you have a thought that is not racist, being anti-racist, against racism. And that's, that's the work, is like, we're all going to have racist thoughts, all of us. And how do we shift and bring awareness to like, oh, that thing I thought was racist. Working on not saying those things, pulling back on the microaggressions, pulling back on that. How can I shift my thinking? How can I shift my perspective to be anti-racist? There's one of the front desk girls at the studio I worked at confided in me that some of our Black students at one point felt very uncomfortable in my class because a white student had asked to touch her hair, which seems so small and simple, unless you are a Black woman, in which case, at this point in the podcast, you are enraged and you want to flip a table.
Right.
Because this is like a microaggression that happens all of the time to Black women. And I was so sad that I didn't see this happen.
Right.
But I don't know, this was like a year ago, I don't know that I would have had the courage as a teacher then to have stood up for that student. And now I hope that I would have the courage in me to say like, hey, so that's not okay. That is a racist question and behavior. And we're not going to go down that road. We're going to stay over here. How do you handle these moments with grace? And that I'm genuinely asking that. How do we handle these moments of grace? I don't always know.
we need a manual on all this.
Yes, there's no good handbook for this stuff at all. It is truly being like listening better to our students who are BIPOC, who are not super skinny, who are, even just the spaces that we practice yoga in. The changing rooms in my studio are way too small for a plus size person to change in. They're just too small. The clothing that we sell, we sell a ton of extra small stuff, but do we sell any extra large stuff? Do we sell any men's stuff? Do we sell any like sort of generic non-binary clothing? No. I'm almost inspired by this moment of pause for us to not be able to teach in person, so that we could really, like, it's my hope, and maybe this is overly hopeful, but that the studio owners and the studio leaders take this time where we can't be in person to reevaluate what we are putting out there in this wellness industry that is ripe with elitist, white, skinny, rich thought, right?
Right.
Could we put into these spaces true equity in how we present them? Not just for skinny people, not just for white people. How could those shifts start to happen? And it is an undertaking, but it is totally worth it. Because I'm sure, you feel the same as me, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but yoga has transformed me as a person into such a better human. And
yeah.
And I did a lot of work to get here, and I'm going to continue to do a lot of work, but I should not feel like let me rephrase that. I want everyone to have that opportunity, not just people who look like me.
Yeah, I would say the same. I would say yoga really has given me, an opportunity to shift and change. And I think that without it, I may not have gotten to the point where I was able to call you and have a conversation, and even be where I'm at in this My podcast is very different right now. It has been for a little while since Corona started, and I feel okay with it. I'm not just bringing on, all these giant yoga teachers who are awesome. Not taking away from that, because they're awesome and I love having them on the show, but I'm having these normal conversations with, we'll call us everyday people. And I don't know, for me, it's just been a lot more real. It's been a lot more, I'm growing with everyone to get, like, right now in this moment, I am literally growing with everyone together. And I hope that, those listening to the podcast right now get to do the same in this strange time to be alive. And, this kind of just goes without saying, Ashley, but, I'll say this out loud. I just want to say thank you again for showing up and doing your work, but also holding the space for me this past weekend to do my work and to process in real time and to relate and to be there. Cause it's very hard when you feel like you're going through it on your own.
Oh my God. Yes. And nobody likes fucking up. No one likes making mistakes.
Yeah.
And especially around things like race, and especially when you are someone who considers themselves an ally, it feels it's like such a complicated, overwhelming feeling.
It's yucky.
And I'm also, it's so yucky. And I'm so proud of you for also not calling a Black friend and dumping this on them. Do you know what I mean? Because that's also really I want to be validated by someone who looks like the person who told me I did the bad thing. And it's there's other ways.
Right.
There's other ways to not burden people with that. And I think the biggest lesson for me, especially in the last 2 months, is it still August? Oh my God. Yeah. Whatever time is.
Yeah.
Has been that I've been working with white people for Black Lives Matter for a few years now. And the best lesson I've learned, and the one that I'm seeing the most still needs to be learned over and over again for me and for my friends, is whenever I feel like my opinion has changed, or I want to post something, or I have this thing I want to say in support, I now have a system where I will call someone who has been doing this allyship work longer than me.
Right.
And I say, hey, I was thinking about this. What is this? Can you talk me through this? And we will sort of bounce the ideas off of each other before I say my post, before I run my mouth, whatever the thing is, so that I am not burdening a person of color with this information, because they're like, yeah, we've been living it, catch up. And B, so that I make sure that I am taking everyone into accountability when I speak. Because so often, and you and I are fiery people.
A little bit.
When we get worked up, it's right from the throat. It's not from the brain. It's just I need to correct you, or whatever the thing is. It's a thoughtless, just nope, this needs to change. This is injustice. This is wrong. And it's that may be true, but how am I communicating this?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And what's the intention?
Is the delivery going to be helpful or not?
Right. Am I going to hurt someone accidentally while I'm trying to stand up for someone else? how do we phrase this?
Well, Ashley, I just want to say thanks a lot for doing your work and for showing up and just sharing with all of us. I'm sure this has been super informative to someone that has been doing this work and someone that may be new to stepping into this work. There's a lot of really good, nuggets in here. Even, something as simple as looking at who you're following is a great place to start.
Yeah.
So,
and it's fun.
Yeah.
There's some incredible yogis out there.
Yeah, totally. I just thank you for doing what you're doing and keeping me inspired to do what I'm doing. And yeah, thanks for sharing your wisdom with us on the show today.
And thank you for your courage to tell that yucky story. And I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. Until the next Seeker and Sage, this is Ashley and Danny saying peace out.
Peace out.